All right, this is the regular City Council work session meeting for March 6th. Present today is myself, Kathleen Refkin, and Mayor Lisa Whalen is out, and Ann McGregor is here. Otherwise, Councilmember Claudia Lacey and Peter Vickery are also absent. Director of Public Works, Gary Peters, is here. Also, our City Clerk, Don Motzko, and Allison Fauski, our WSB engineer, is here, and Brian Krim, our Finance Director, and Jasper Krugel, our City Administrator, are here. The first item is the 10-year Street Capital Improvement Plan.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Refkin, and those present. So included in the packet was a link for a draft of the 10-year CIP. Public Works Director Peters and I have been working on a maintenance program to go out 10 years. So before we handed it over to the GIS folks to put a map to it. So what I brought up here, this is what you first see when you link it up. And I'd just like to go over a few features before I take questions and feedback from the group. So one of the things, personally, I find the aerial is a little hard to see some of the detail. It might be easier to navigate with a different background. The aerial is a nice feature if you're looking into more detail as to where your home is, but for an overall mapping feature, you can change it. I found that this navigation background was nice to look at the area system-wide. So that's one feature I wanted to point out. The other feature is this layer list. So you'll note that when the system, when the map loads, it shows both the historical projects and proposed projects, which is very difficult to read. But certainly, where the intent is for users to be able to toggle between the two. So it's the default is to have both of those on. What I thought is to go through historical work first, and then look at the proposed projects past our, what we've defined up until through 2025. And then click on this side here. It brings up the historical projects. I'll go through this in a little more detail. Zooming out a little bit more system-wide. We can turn on the city boundary, gravel roads and county roads, just so if you wanted to look at a system as a whole, so that users can say, well, wait a minute, my road's not shown on here. If they turn on either of these, that indicates that it's a road that's not within that the city's local paved roadway system. So that's kind of the overview of the mapping function. So I'll just go through some of our past project areas just to show you a little bit of the features. And I apologize, I'm on my laptop here, which is kind of finicky, as you can see.
Mine was doing the same thing.
Okay, I feel better. So if we look in through here, for example, these areas, this might be a better way. There we go. So if we look through here, Stonebridge, Lakeview, Margaret area, those are recent projects. So if I click on a roadway segment, a little window pops up. It indicates the street name, the year it was built. Previous project was a seal coat in 2009. And then there's an arrow up here that a user can click on to find out other projects. So it's in 2020, that was a reclamation project. So the reason it's being presented in this way is because we have street segments that have had a number of maintenance activities or projects performed in there, and we wanted to provide the users of this map, the whole picture to really illustrate the funds that the city's historically put into streets within the city. So that's kind of we went through this. There's a lot of historical information. I've noticed a couple things even after we've done a few iterations of QA, QC, because we are looking at the complete roadway system. There are still some notes that I've made, things that I see that need to be changed, and I anticipate that will continue. We have a lot of history in the city. This is our first launch of this, so I do anticipate updates to be made, but the goal was to get something out here for residents to take a look at. So in the under the list here, you will see the color coding is based on what type of work was performed, whether it was a maintenance activity like crack fill or seal coat, or if it was a structural project like reconstruction, reclamation, that sort of thing. If we move over to the proposed 10-year CIP, turn that off, turn this on, our colors now represent years instead of projects. And the reason being is when we looked at what we wanted this map to illustrate, it was not only what we've done historically on the streets, but also what's being proposed this year and beyond. So we dialed it into by year. Certainly, we have a very detailed plan moving forward for the next few years here. Included in the packet from year 2028 and beyond, you see some years that are lower in estimated costs. 1.7 million in 2028, and then 3.3 in 2029 and 2032. So we're seeing some fluctuations in there, but it's so far out. We are averaging about 1.9 million a year. It's not a number that's meant to scare the council or to commit to a budget. This is certainly a planning document, not a commitment. But it is a good indicator of an approximate amount that you may want to look at spending in the future, and certainly anything beyond 5 years. It's a projection. What we're anticipating is that we would be looking at this map on an annual basis to update it based on what the council's direction will be moving forward for funding, both for maintenance and for projects. So it's certainly a living map. We would include notice on the application here that it's subject to change. It's based on the best information available, those sorts of things, so that users understand that this isn't something that they can really hold tight to. It's a planning document. So when we look in,
if I may, I'd say like the 23 obviously is pretty. We're gonna probably do that. But like 24 and 25, those are pretty much set, like 75% there, and we matched it up with kind of the budget that we have for the CIP right now, anticipating a portion of that being used for the bond payments moving forward in 24, 25. One thing that I want to make sure you guys understand is during the budget process, likely during the strategic planning process, you're going to have to come up with kind of what kind of percentage increase you want to add to that CIP, the street CIP, in 2024, 2025. I think for planning purposes, for what Gary and Allison and I know Brian helped out on, I think we put in there like a 3% adder or a 2% adder each year, something like that.
Somewhere in that neighborhood, yes.
As a placeholder. So that's an assumption that we made. Depending on all the other things that we might want to do, you'll have to prioritize how much and at what scale you want to increase that funding. So in order to get back up to what we were at, I think it was 875 last year, 875 this year. We'll have to build that up over time. So the idea will be at what pace do we want to do that, and that'll determine what projects we actually do. So that's just an assumption, but we'll be talking more about that for 2024, along with all the other kind of priorities.
So along that same thread, one of the things that we talked about, I don't have it on here, but when we look at, looking at the layers and the proposed year, there's certainly an opportunity to include the amount budgeted next to the year, if that's something the council would like to look at putting out there so that residents can see what budgets have been identified for these years. At this initial launch, we didn't include those, but that's certainly something we could put in there. So again, looking into the proposed projects, for example, so Kings Point Road is kind of a good one because you'll see it's all shown for 2023, but it's different segments. So we have this northern segment, which the council's identified for overlay this year. So it shows initially in 1973. Built in 1973. Proposed project is an overlay in 2023. But if we go to another segment of Kings Point Road, the older segment, it's showing just a crack fill. We're doing a maintenance project. So that's the user interface that we were looking at presenting to residents. Again, we would have the disclaimer that it would be subject to change based on budgetary designations and better information. For example, when we're looking at the 2024 projects, we have some coring in for those roadways, but there's other roadways that we need cores to confirm what type of work would be a good use of taxpayer dollars in that area. So we would include that disclaimer on the map through here. So I think that's all I really wanted to go over. Love to hear feedback, whether it's here tonight or if there's, you get in and you start playing around, some features that you might want to see on the map, information that we could include. But I think this is a nice illustration to residents to show that, holistically there's in the next 10 years, the idea is to look at performing some type of either maintenance or project on every street, every paved local road in the city.
And eventually, Alice and I were talking too, we'd like to get the gravel roads on here eventually for maintenance. Where are we adding more rock, where ditch projects coming, stuff like that eventually. So everything will be eventually in there.
When I was looking over it, and I may have gotten the wrong part on the map, but it looked like the project for North Arm wasn't going to be, like it was only going to go to Burl Oaks, and then it wasn't going to actually finish North Arm. So, it's just a question mark.
Oh, this section here?
Yeah. Is that
Oh.
North Arm?
You're correct. That should be in 2023.
Okay.
So I'll add that to the list.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So as you're looking at this, if there's a way to better describe this data so that like residents can get some usefulness out of it, because there's a lot of stuff going on, right? And it can be kind of overwhelming. One of the biggest takeaways I get from this is like, you look at it, you zoom out to the whole city, you can see that, well, geez, there's a lot of stuff going on in the next 10 years, potentially $19 million worth of projects if we stick to this 10-year plan. That's a pretty significant investment, right? But that's what people want. That's what they, we get a lot of calls about roads, and I think we're doing a pretty good job of getting in front of it.
I think this is wonderful. I think it's fantastic. Another thing that I'm not seeing on your map that I saw, I was looking at it on my computer at home, and maybe I'm not, and I'm missing those glasses tonight. There are some that show like double colors, and I don't see it on your map.
So I know some of them. Did you perhaps have because if you have both layers on, it'll show double colors. But I can take a look.
Well,
Yeah.
The blue, yeah.
So, and that's when we kicked off the conversation, this shows both the historic work and the proposed work,
Okay.
and that
That's
makes
the
it
double color.
kind of. And so
Yeah.
maybe do we want to put like a helpful hints pop up to say, it defaults to show both for clarity, so we could put some pop-up windows to help people navigate through that, because that's exactly it. When it first loads, it's actually a difficult map to read, in my opinion, because it's showing too much information at one time.
Yeah. So
It's
there's
a wonderful project.
I like it. It's nice.
So if there's ways that you think that, different things that you could put in the table of contents on the left side that you could just turn it on and say, oh, that's helpful. I think it'll be very helpful for staff as we get calls, because even realtors that sell properties, is there anything planned adjacent to a house that's for sale? Somebody like Darcy can just field that call and answer it really, really quickly. So
That's great.
Another application. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, you said very nice.
Another application that I know Gary works very closely with Hennepin County, and on an annual basis, we have conversations with their staff as far as what they're proposing to do for work. I did give them the heads up that this map was going to be released, and that's very helpful for them in planning their projects, that they can go and see what local projects are anticipated. They may or may not happen, but it's a good tool for our partners in local and county government too, to see what projects we're anticipating coming down the line.
Very nice. Jasper, is this what you did in your previous job?
Somewhat, yeah. Are you talking just GIS stuff in general? Yeah. So very similar items to this type of work, definitely.
And can we change what it defaults to when you open it, so it can open without the green and all that stuff? Or
Yep, absolutely. If and that's like, again, that's the feedback that I have my opinions, but
no, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
if we maybe default to proposed projects and then we'll default to now. Okay. Proposed projects. Okay.
I mean, the color pencil map is cool though. It looks neat.
I didn't play around too much with those, and maybe we could also pare that down too. I mean, and maybe someone has time to kill that they want to go through all that. What are thoughts on putting the budget amounts in for the next 3 years worth of projects? Is that something the council would like to see, or are we better off to just leave it as is? And
Let's talk about the Pandora's box of doing that.
Yeah. And I don't think we should.
Okay.
I don't think that. Yeah. I don't. Well, and plus pricing changes rapidly with what's going on. So if we put like this will be $1 million project and it ends up being like 1.5, that's going to cause some issues. And
I think most people just want to know
when it's going to be done.
when it's going to be done, and then what it's potentially going to cost them if they're going to be any type of assessment. And and that until you really get down to the details, you're putting on, or is it 10? Is it 8? Is it worth even putting that on there, like even accessible projects versus mill and overlay, and making any delineations might just muddy the waters.
Yeah, because that can change from year to year. I think just this is our best guess at this point in time. I think what would be good is if the first time you open the map, you get a little pop up disclaimer like you see, and just say this, a little blurb about just the process that we use to define the projects, and that it can change on an annual basis.
okay.
And then you basically have to read that before you get into it. Then because that's the biggest concern I think I've heard is, if you guys adopt this CIP, that means you're going to do it and you're going to expend these funds. That's not the case. So it's an annual kind of evaluation.
That's when it's probably best to show it year to year versus putting any type of windows, like this might be done in the next 3 years versus 3 to 7 versus, or 3 to 5, or I don't know if that would even just make things more.
That's something that actually you have to answer as staff, because what I remember in our first year, we had the people that were down off of 44 that got hysterical because they said they had been hitting the city for 10 years to get their roads done, and that we were trying to take it away from them. It was the beginning work of and so my thought process is that we don't want a bunch of hysterical people here. So the questions that you get from residents, do you get a lot of people calling to ask when their roads are going to be done?
Occasionally or something.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly have one individual who calls every year asking when their gravel road will be paved. I know Director Peters probably gets more calls on complaints than I do. But yeah, maybe a handful of calls every year if a project's proposed.
There are a lot of people that want their gravel roads paved. I just
Get quite a
remember
few
one
phone
council
calls.
meeting where he said he did it one time.
Yeah, we get a handful of people every year calling, hey, has everything changed, and like that. So, it's kind of the same people asking, especially, in certain areas, it's always the same people asking every year from year to year, so.
And Gary, so Gary, do you like the idea of having the budget
No,
up there?
no way.
Okay.
I'm glad to hear you guys don't want it, because I mean, then everybody looks at that and, well, how come it went up so much? Yeah,
Great.
yeah, it'd be great if you at 1.5 and it comes in at 900,000. It's great, but if it's the other way around, then you're going to have to answer a lot of questions.
Yeah. The other thing we had talked about putting on here and opted not to include on this was the pavement condition scores.
No.
Because
that's
it's
just going to cause more questions. They're not
it's-
going to understand what
yeah.
those are.
And that's where we went down to, is that it will include it in the the pop-up window saying the information used to develop this, but we agree with what you indicated. It would just it causes people, well, there are roads in worse condition than mine. There's and flip sides. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, so if there's additional feedback, we'll just, have it be a living application, and if there's ways that we can change it, if residents make some comments that we think are, that makes a lot of sense, we'll just implement it and we'll kind of change it as it is, and we'll look at it each year. The biggest thing with these types of applications is it's important to keep them up to date, because you get something that's 2 years old and people, then it just loses all its value. So that'll be something that we'll work on annually, kind of in conjunction with the budget process.
And one probably silly thing, but like 2026 and 2027, those colors are remarkably similar.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can pick a different one so people who are colorblind can see those better.
Yeah, and that's a good point, and thank you for the feedback, because I should ask if there's some way that if a user can say I'm colorblind and get some, because I think that is certainly a challenge. We want to be able to include as many people as possible. Okay.
One thing that I know that they can do too is if you open that up to the proposed projects, you open it up, you can see all the years. You can add a button so you can turn those off too if you want. So if you just want to say, well, I just want to see 2023, what's going on, or 2024, you could do that too. So that's something that could refine it, because there's only so many colors that you can use. That's the biggest problem, and they're all kind of similar.
I like that. Put that in there too.
Claudia, do you have any comments on it?
I was one of those people that called every year regarding my road. But I was always treated, they kind of gave us the right information, and we did get our road redone, but that's the only comment I have. Thank you. And the road was atrocious, unacceptable. So part of the reason why I think it's one thing that everyone in the city of Minnetrista wants: nice roads, water, and nice roads.
Anything else, Allison?
No, thank you for the feedback. I appreciate it.
All right. Now we have the City Council Chambers sign. Jasper.
All right, Madam Acting Mayor, is that what it is? Members of council, in your packet for the work session, you can kind of see the outline of this. There were some conversations that were had about the flag that is behind us right now, and possibly replacing that with an actual fixed sign, like a physical sign. So staff looked into that. We looked at a couple different vendors and came up with this one from KJ Branding out of Buffalo, Minnesota. They've done quite a bit of work. If you've checked out their website, I think I put the link in here. Yeah. So they're reputable. They've done a lot of work around Minnesota for municipalities and other agencies. So what we propose to do here is it'd be a 7-foot wide sign, so just slightly bigger than the flag that you see right now. It'd be oval shaped. The blue elements that you see there, they would be actually acrylic raised about 1/4 inch to kind of accent it a little bit. And then there's the option of having it backlit or not. Backlighting, it's subtle backlighting, not like something very bright, but you'd be able to see it. We'd have to we wouldn't really know until we did it, but at a council meeting, I don't think it would be too distracting, but if it is, you just turn it off. for like town halls and things like that we would hold in here. You could turn it on. You'd have the options to do that. So, but it is a little bit. It's more expensive to backlight it. I think it's like $800 more dollars ish or so, $850. So, the fiscal impact for this, you can see the non-lit sign with installation is $2,020, and with the backlit option with installation is $2,870. So those are the options. We're just kind of looking for direction if we want to do this or not. If we do, then we'll proceed. The funding source for this would be the leftover funds that were from the chair CIP item that we had in here. So there is a funding source, we'll call it. So we don't have to worry about that, but that's where that would come from. And the turnaround time on this is like 4 to 6 weeks, so it's pretty quick that to be able to get something out here. So what we're looking for is, do we want to do it, yes or no? And if we do we want it backlit or not? So,
Carrie, is there power to backlight it?
not at the moment.
I don't know if there's any outlets there.
There is not. So the closest outlet is right over here, so they'd have to run something over there. So that would be an additional cost. You could run board along the edge too if you wanted. But ideally, you put the outlet behind the sign so you don't have anything there.
You look confused.
No, just looking at it, you could get it. There's just the way these walls are made with panels. It's kind of you could get it there, but what's behind here?
Break room, isn't
Break
it?
room.
Yeah, it would be, I guess, right?
Well,
Kind of a weird angle. There
there's
might
gotta be
be some.
nothing behind this. I wonder how you get to that. It's got to be empty
Yeah.
space. That's empty space back there.
Crawling through the ceiling. No, I don't know. We would if that we'd have to look at it a little bit. If backlighting was the preferred choice, we'd have to look at it. And if it's not feasible to put an outlet there, then we'd probably just say no backlighting at the time.
Yeah, then I say yes to the sign, and I say yes to the backlighting too.
I do too.
I do 3.
There you go.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, we'll look into it a little bit about the outlet, and then get back to them here shortly and let them know that we're going to proceed.
Perfect. All right. Anything else? All right. Can we do a motion to adjourn? Or do we just adjourn?
You can just adjourn. Yeah.
And the work session meeting is now adjourned.